I'm interested in the history of the genre and where these different types of styles came from, because it does seem like to some degree you got James M. Cain, Dave Goodis, Jim Thompson, writing in similar styles. Is it just that they're reading one another at that time, influenced by the same sources like Dashiell Hammett? What is it?
I really don't know. I think that you just become a combination, somehow of your own reading and whatever comes from yourself. But to really figure it out, I don't have a clue.
Now, J.D., rural North Carolina plays a big part in your novel. So how are you influenced by the people of North Carolina, particularly in rural North Carolina, as it relates to your writing? How are the novels influenced by that?
Well, it's not just rural North Carolina so much as it is the sort of contrast that you find in this state. You have, where I'm from is an area where you have, Pinehurst, which is a very rich area, a lot of golf, a lot of retirees come down, a lot of money. But in the same county, you've got the town of Robbins, John Edwards' hometown, where when the mill closed down, everybody was out of work. And that has always been a big influence on me, that sort of contrast in North Carolina, where you've got great wealth and great poverty, great sophistication, and then great lack of sophistication, cheek by jowl. I mean, they're
sure.
very, and when those folks collide with one another, hijinks ensue.
So that dichotomy is something that you see every day in Moore County.
Sure. Well, and I also practice law, and you really do. I do criminal law, and I work with representing abused and neglected children, representing the guardian ad litem program, and you really do see a lot of people who are living, very, on the edge type lives.
Now, Vicki, let's talk a little bit about your novel, Miami Purity. It's recently been re-released, right? And I read this wonderful blurb from Michael Connelly, New York Times bestselling author Michael Connelly, who says that Miami Purity is a modern noir masterpiece. Tell us the story of how the novel was picked up by Busted Flush Press, named after the John D. McDonald boat, I suppose. Mm-hmm. How did that come about? How did the re-release come about?
Well, Michael Connelly actually had a hand in it, because I believe he ran into David Thompson, who is the publisher, and also at Murder by the Book, Murder on the Page.
Murder by the Book in Houston.
In Houston.
In Texas.
I can't keep these all straight. But, and apparently a few other people happened to mention Miami Purity at the same conference. And so David Thompson looked into it and decided to do it. I find that writers really like my writing, which is, probably something that I, really cherish. And Michael Connelly and Laura Lippman, they're always saying something about me and my work if they get a chance. So I really appreciate that, and I think that's how Miami Purity got reprinted.
Well, it sounds like, a classic novel of the genre, or a modern classic anyways. It's disappointing to me that it would even go out of print, to begin with.
Actually, it was a Black Lizard paperback, and they told me it would never go out of print, but I don't know what that means then in publishing, because it did, or it went terminally out of stock or something like that. But I appreciate you calling it a classic. It was called a redneck classic or a trailer trash classic. I don't know. But
my kind of novel, yeah.
It does sort of have the classic plot, the betrayal for money and the love triangle. So I think it fits very well in that way. And of course the protagonist is the murderer. So and doomed from the start, as you can tell, by her own psychology. So to me, that's what noir is, really, a character-driven novel, of some twisted soul.
Now, you've used the term, J.D., redneck noir yourself, or
right.
It's been applied to your work.
Well, it really originally started as sort of a joke. People ask me, what do you call your book? And I said, well, I call it redneck noir. like I say, it started as a joke, and then somebody picked it up. I think Patrick Anderson, the Washington Post, picked it up, and from then on, just sort of got applied to it. It's, it's sort of dark crime fiction, set in the South, particularly in North Carolina.
And how would that be different than, say, a novel set in the Midwest? What are some of the codes, or what are the lives like that are different than, say, in rural Ohio, for example?
I don't think I think it's probably just the accents that are different. I mean, like I say, I write a lot about people who are living right on the edge, and then people who go over the edge and just stop giving a damn about whether they live or die. And there's a lot of people that are right on the edge of that, and I think you find that probably in the South, you find that in the Northeast. One of my big inspirations for The Devil's Right Hand was a book by George V. Higgins called The Friends of Eddie Coyle, which was a sort of noir novel set in the Northeast. Probably find it in Arizona. I think those people are everywhere. It's not just a Southern thing. I just happen to be a Southerner. I happen to be from North Carolina, and that's what I write.
Now, this might sound like a bit of an academic question, but how does ethics come into play in your novels? It seems like that's a pretty gray area in the books. These characters kind of walk this ethical line between what's right and wrong.
Well, like most hard-boiled heroes or protagonists, Jack Keller, who's my bounty hunter character in Safe and Sound and The Devil's Right Hand and Good Day in Hell, he sort of makes up his own ethical code or doesn't necessarily make it up, but it sort of comes to him as he goes along. The world that he lives in, there is a lot of corruption and there is a lot of unethical behavior, so he has to sort of get a grip on what's important to him and what makes sense to him. For instance, he's fiercely loyal to his friends. He will literally walk through fire, for his friends and the people he cares about. And in the third book, Safe and Sound, which is out now, you really find out how far he will go to protect the people that he loves. And he goes pretty far.
Now, we've got a copy of Safe and Sound here so that you can see it at home. Now, a bunch of folks watching the program are aspiring writers themselves. How did you find your literary agent? Now, Safe and Sound is the third book in the Jack Keller series.
That's correct.
Right, and you've got a standalone coming out soon.
Right, it's called Breaking Cover. That'll be out next year.
Breaking Cover. So tell us a little bit about literary agents and how you found your literary agent.
Well, first off, as some of you may know, agents are the new gatekeepers. They're the ones who really get you to the publishers. The publishers don't have lots of busy little junior editors reading unsolicited manuscripts. In fact, if you send a publisher now an unsolicited manuscript, they'll send it back unopened. Most of the big publishers don't take anything that's not agented. So you've got to have an agent to get you in the door. They've become, again, the new gatekeepers. And how I did that was how a lot of people did it. I looked up agents. I looked up agents in the backs of books. I would look in the acknowledgments in the back of my favorite books and say, well, who represents this guy? This is what I like. This is who I want to write like. This is his or her agent. And so I sent out query letters. This is my book. This is what it's about. This is the audience I think it'll appeal to. And I did that a lot, and I got back a lot of thanks but no thanks. I got back a lot of, send me some sample pages, followed by thanks but no thanks. I got a lot of, I got some very encouraging rejections, which are, sort of a two-edged sword. I really like this, I really think you'll go far with this, but it's not for me, it's not what I'm looking for. Finally, one night, I was just about, I was really on the verge of giving up. I ran across a website, and I can't remember, it's called Everybody Who's Anybody or Anybody Who's Everybody. It was a website on the internet, and there are various ones now. The one that's probably the most prevalent right now is called agentquery.com, but it's agents who were looking for new clients. And so I just dashed off, 2 o'clock in the morning, dashed off an email to this guy, Scott Miller with Trident Media Group, and it was a little different from my standard query letter because it was late at night and I was tired and I was a little more relaxed. I wrote a little more relaxed than the more formal query letter. He sent me back an email the next morning saying, sure, send it to me. So I sent it to him, and he called me and I immediately started, checking around, like, is this guy really legit? I probably should have checked that out before, and I was like, yeah, Trident Media Group, the guy that started that used to be with William Morris. Yeah, he's legit. So, we struck up a professional relationship, and very soon after that is when the book sold to St. Martin's. I mean, once you get an agent, usually he or she has an idea of who they want to sell the book to or who will buy the book, and that's why they agree to represent it. So it usually runs pretty fast after that. The trick is finding an agent, and it can be very discouraging, and it can take a long time. Just keep doing it if you're an aspiring writer. It's all I can say.
Yeah, finding the